All right, welcome back, everybody. Scott Tucker here, and welcome back to another episode of Veteran Wealth Secrets, where today we are lucky to have leadership coach Colonel Rob Campbell, the author of At Ease, and it's personal, not personnel. Did I say that right? I was afraid I was going to say that right, but
Yeah, you did. You got it, Scott.
no. But thanks, Rob. Really appreciate you coming on. I know you've got a lot of insight to share in this space, and kind of you were asking before, what's the purpose of the show? Is it just around transition? And I think we all know that transition happens all throughout life, even
Sure.
while you're on your career or whatever. But clearly, something gave you the epiphany to say, hey, I'm going to I got something to share, and I think more of us have something to share, whether it's a book or a podcast, or just recognizing that, hey, go getting that next paycheck or that next corporate gig isn't the leadership that we were bred to do in the military, or I think a lot of
hmm
us enjoy doing. So if we're worried about money, then maybe we don't have the freedom to do those things. So that's kind of my mission behind the show. So you're a perfect person to come on and share some of your thoughts. So thanks again for coming on.
My pleasure, Scott. You got a great program here.
I really appreciate it. But so tell us a little bit about kind of your journey through your own trans. What did you think you were going to be doing? And then how did you actually end up doing what you're doing now?
Yeah, try and keep it short. We could spend an hour on that alone and all
Yeah.
that I've learned, right?
But
But
there's some sort of epiphany probably was like, oh, cow, I wasn't expecting that, right?
yeah, without question. I'm looking at the title here, Veteran Wealth Secrets. I have a secret to wealth. So my story,
Great.
yeah, it goes back to I had 27 years in the Army. Made it a full career, enjoyed every day. It was wonderful. But we got to the point in my career where, my path and the Army's path started to diverge for the first time. So we made a conscious decision to transition out. 2016, not a clue what I wanted to do. All right, the Army was easy. They gave me my occupational skill, move out. Not much more to it. I knew my career path ahead of me, so it required no creativity whatsoever. Now on the outside, I got a blank sheet of paper
Mm-hmm.
that I got to fill in. So I did talk to a bunch of folks, as I was transitioning out, some that were a few years ahead of me, and decided to kind of take a break, take a year off. I've got a pension, so that helped, keep the bills paid. But my wife went to work for a year, but I needed to kind of pump the brakes and just reflect on what I had been through and just try and pace myself getting assimilated back into a society that I left behind. I think the biggest secret for me and even as much as I knew, it's knowing what my core purpose was as I transitioned out. That doesn't say what exactly you're going to do, but it says why you're placed on this earth. Mine is to make a difference in the lives of others through optimistic leadership. Sounds kind of bumper stickerish, but I developed that in a weekend program, before I took command in the Army, my last unit, brigade on the 101st, and I came out with that. And I knew when I transitioned out that I needed to fulfill that core purpose somehow, some way. I could get a job, I could start my own business, I could do lots of things, but I had to stick to that. And that's really the key to transition. All the veterans I talk to is to get to know who they are truly to their core, because it's not required in the military. You don't need to know that in the military, but you need to know that on the outside. And I knew that going into it. And in the year I took off, I've enjoyed writing, always did, never really did much anything with it. And then I said, okay, I'm going to commit to a book, and wrote a book on leadership in the spring of 17, started a business around that. And that's what I've been doing ever since. And so the big secret is really knowing yourself. And I will tell you that even I knew that core purpose, there are things about me that, I got two coaches that helped me. One of them really helped me see myself a little clearer and deeper, to know who I truly was, because I almost went off on some wrong paths. Like, I almost became a financial advisor.
Oh,
I love financial advisors, right? I have a financial advisor, but I'm not a details guy. I'm not a numbers guy. So that's not Rob Campbell. There'd be some fulfillment there, or making a difference in the lives of others, but unfulfillment in terms of the details that I'd be thrusted into. And that was really important to know that as I transitioned out. And if I took the wrong step, I could return to that somehow. That was a big thing for me.
right. Well, I was that guy who became the financial advisor, so totally understand what you're talking about. Was not for me. I'm a visionary versus an
Yep.
implementer,
Yeah.
and that's kind of why I ended up doing this, because it ended up being years later. That was the only way I knew how to make money.
Hmm.
So, but I love what you did, and I want to come back to you giving yourself that permission to take the year off, because no wonder we get shuffled through, like you said, you get shuffled to your next duty station, job description, go to this school, get this, qualification, get this clearance, and it's easy to fill a bill it, like we get that,
Yep.
but um that's not how it's going to be in the civilian world. And so if we just think that the transition process is going to funnel us into a nice corporate gig, I mean, that could be the case, but if we're just looking at the balance sheet, so to speak, of our paycheck, man, we're missing out on so much of the journey. And that's kind of my mission. It's like, all right, if you're worried about the money, then maybe we should think about this different. If we're worried about the financial advice, the biggest opportunity for wealth in your lifetime is that moment you get out of the military. Look, you didn't expect to start a business. Maybe you just thought you were looking to find the job, better job that was going to be a better fit, or maybe a better corporation. But obviously, you'd given yourself permission financially, or putting yourself in the position to be able to pull that off in some
Hmm.
regard. And look at the freedom it gave you at the end. So
Yeah.
just a powerful story. I think just totally resonates with the message we're getting across with Vettermost Secrets. So, how did you give that? Because I can imagine, hey, most colonels are just like, hey, I'm doing what everybody else did. Wanting to secure that government gig. Who do you know at Booz Allen? Like that's a
Right.
big deal. I was younger when I got out, and single, and more flexible, and traveled the world a little bit. But I think more people need to be doing what you did, honestly.
Yeah, it's not easy. My business took a hit during the pandemic, and still,
Sure.
it's a chase. Nobody's knocking down my door because I'm Colonel Rob Campbell. I got to go find business
Right.
and got to prove to them that I can provide value. So it's not easy. It's tough. I think, if you could get yourself financially stable enough to take that time off, or to get a job that's just not overwhelming, and give yourself that space to really rediscover yourself and get assimilated back into society. That can be really helpful. There are ways to do it. One of the things I talk about is not to drop any anchors, because I did it. When I got out, we rushed to the coast of North Carolina, bought a house on the beach, and plopped down. And this was it. This is where we're going to spend our days. Well, we didn't end up really liking the neighborhood that much. And the house needed a lot of repair, and that's not what I want to do. And I had to buy an adjacent lot. It just kind of ballooned into something that just wasn't us. And we got the itch to move again. And so um, instead of fighting that, we celebrated it, sold a bunch of our stuff, sold the house, moved out, and got into an apartment, and started doing that. So it was that time that I took, to think about the next step, and actually kind of stumbled through a few things. Got into an entrepreneurship course and talked to a guy that wrote a book and said, "Okay, I can do that,"
Yeah.
and tried it, and then there it was, and off it went. Um, I certainly wouldn't chase a startup again. I mean, knowing what I know now about entrepreneurship, I probably would have got into a franchise or bought an existing business. I didn't know those to be options. And that's probably what
Interesting.
I would have done. I love what I do in Rob Campbell Leadership. I'll always do that to some scale, but there can be something else out there, I think, a revenue generator.
Yeah, I've been interviewing more and more people in the franchise, either of maybe run a UPS store or franchise brokers, and I
Sure.
was like, this is a world I didn't, but a lot of veterans are into it. Makes a lot of sense. Hey, are you good at following rules and a system in place? You want some freedom and responsibility? It's hard work, but no, very
Hmm.
interesting. But right in the book,
Yep.
what was that process like? You said, okay, I heard somebody saw somebody do it. Like I can do that. Like obviously, I have something to. If I got in front of soldiers, I must have something to say at some point in your career. And I think, if anything, writing a book for me for the first time I did it was more just almost like a journal to myself of
Yep.
just things I wish somebody had told me. Yeah. How was it? How was it for you?
Yeah. Great question, and a really amazing journey. I mean, it started in January of 17. I'm in an entrepreneurship retreat, Whistler, British Columbia, skiing all day, masterminding at night. It was a really great
Oh, that
opportunity.
sounds nice.
Oh yeah, and this dude is sold real estate. Wrote a book in 100 days, and it kind of pissed me off. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm in the heart of darkness. I've been surrounded by terrorists. I could do that. So I wrote mine in 90. and but I didn't know what I was doing, and I had talked to a another veteran had written a book, and kind of walked me through the process a little bit. And it really was just about getting your thoughts down on paper and not worrying about typeset, cover, marketing, publishing, none of that. You know, someone will help you do that. It was really about getting that core product done. For me, I just had to kind of sketch it out in an outline form, right? Okay, I want to talk about investing in people. Well, let's talk about knowing yourself. All right, that's a chapter. I mean, I could talk forever on knowing yourself. So there it is. There's chapter one, right? And then I kind of stacked it up and then laid it out. Said, okay, this would make sense. This would flow, and I have a story to tell because people want to read a story. They want to learn about a story. Just like when you write, you're telling a story that people want to hear. And I think a lot of veterans, many veterans, have a story inside of them, have a book inside of them that they need to get out. So I started writing, and there were days I couldn't get through a sentence. There were days that I was just flowing and getting stuff done. There were days that I would read a chapter back to myself and say, what in the world are you talking about? You know, I probably wrote the book twice. And like you mentioned, it's very therapeutic for me. I didn't realize it at the time. And I got one of the compliments I got on the book was, man, I wish I had this before I took charge of this organization, right?
Oh, okay.
And my answer was, yeah, me too. I had
Ah,
not
okay.
thought that deeply about leadership until I got down and sat down to write about it. And it was really fulfilling to kind of really process those thoughts and get them on paper. I read a book sometime after I wrote my first one called Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, the Eat, Pray, Love lady. And in that book, she talks about writing and as her creativity, right? And many of us have some sort of creative spirit, a creative thing that we just lays dormant because we can't be the champion or be number one or whatever society wants us to be. We don't think of it in terms of just an enjoyment. And what she opened my eyes to was, yeah, certainly I was writing that leadership book for other people. I wrote my veteran transition book for other people. It filled a void that I felt when I transitioned. But I really wrote them for myself.
Hmm.
And that's okay, right? I mean, they're still relevant and useful, but I wrote them for myself, and that's all right. And that's really what I discovered in that journey. So my advice to potential book writers, just get it on paper. Don't worry about anything. It's spell check, nothing. Just get the core product on paper, get structured out in an outline and then start writing and get it done.
And you mentioned a minute ago enjoyment. I'm guessing one of the main messages that I know you like to say, enjoy the freedom that we fought for.
Yep.
And it's like, when most people in the financial space, they think, all right, if I get enough money, I'll be happy. Or if I get that promotion, I'll be happy. Or sometimes people are thinking, hey, I know my identity, but I don't have enough money. And it really all ties together. But we often easily forget the enjoyment of it all. We're too easily posting stuff on Facebook instead of maybe taking that note in a journal that you might learn from before a leadership experience. If you were to go back, I wish I had written journals my whole life. I
Yeah.
never did. But yeah, tell us about the enjoyment of it, how important that is in any in leading your own life. Really, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's a great topic, Scott. I'm so glad you brought that up. I was just talking about this very thing with another veteran that I met here in Asheville. So last time you and I talked, whether it was email or phone or whatever, or LinkedIn, I was living in Wilmington, North Carolina. My
Okay.
son just graduated from UNC Asheville. We've always loved the mountains. Every time we're out here, it's like, oh God, let's live there. So I just closed on renting a 80-acre farm right outside of Asheville.
Wow.
Because we wanted to do that. I had the freedom to do that. Now, there was this pressure that was there, still is, that I need to seek approval from somebody, right? Because I would have needed the Army's approval to do something like
Right.
that,
Oh my
right?
gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, I want to
Yeah.
rent a
Yeah.
house. I want to rent a house in Asheville with 80 acres of property, this old home. And I'm going to need to ask the Army for that. No, you don't, Rob. You now have the freedom to live wherever you want and do whatever you want, and you really ought to take advantage of that.
Hmm.
And that's what I'm doing. I'm enjoying the freedom that I fought for. And too many veterans, their first act after they transition is to surrender that freedom because the system will push them into a job. The money aspect is there. It's real. Believe me. I mean, there are days I wish I worked in that big corporation and was bringing home six-figure salaries. It would solve a lot of my problems. But I'd be miserable, I believe, because I don't know that I'd like the leader I was working for, or just, having the juice squeezed out of me again after 30 years of serving in the military. So I have to remember that and kind of go back to that and really kind of almost force myself, discipline myself to enjoy those freedoms. If I want to take a nap in the afternoon, then I can. If I want to hike at 10 a.m. in the morning after a call, then I can and I should. And so that's really about, enjoying that new freedom that you fought for. And we as veterans are not used to it because we haven't had that freedom ever. We've always been, beholden to the institution, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, whichever it was. And now when that is released, it's a really weird space for us. Still very weird for me, coming up on 5 years since transition.
Wow, I'm so glad you brought that up. I think that's a point that's completely overlooked. That when we raise our right hand, that we're giving up a lot. Like we
Yep.
literally our freedom to the government. They can literally tell us to walk over here into a machine gun fire. I mean, think
Yep.
about that. And so we just kind of brush over it. Oh, you're civilian again. It's like, no, no, you're not told. You're told what to do for everything in the military, and we don't understand what that really means,
No,
and it takes time. And so we need to have that conversation, for sure,
not easy to
because
let go of.
yeah, it's enlightening because you easily see a path. Oh, there's the uniform to wear. Okay, wear a suit. All right, that's all right. Feels comfortable. Everybody has the same haircut. Everybody yells. They're all angry for some reason. Okay, I know that. It's like you don't have to be in that environment, man.
Right.
It's like
Yeah.
just because oh, it's a lot of hours again. I'm away from my family. No, this is what you wanted to get get that pension for. Remember?
Right.
So we got to give ourselves to permission to remember that. So tell us about your leadership coaching. What kind of who do you serve,
Yep.
and what types of folks should be reaching out to you?
Yep. I do I do a lot in leadership. I really, when I started my business, I was probably spreading myself a bit too thin because I could any place that has a gathering of people, there's a leadership challenge there, right?
Right.
Okay, I can't serve everyone, so I focus on executive leadership coaching, and a sweet spot for me would be a middle-sized company. I could certainly work for some of the bigger ones, and those are fun. But the middle-sized company that's got some depth, 100 employees or so, or more. So there's a leadership structure there that I can work with. It's mature, it's got revenue, and it can afford to invest in some of its leaders. So I'll come in at either a 3-month or a 6-month retainer and do some executive leadership coaching and take a Scott Tucker to the next level because everyone needs a coach.
Yeah.
I also do keynote speaking. It's been pretty rough over the last year, as you can imagine.
Oh yeah.
But that's been a lot of fun to come to an organization and inspire a crowd behind some organizational initiative or tell a story about leadership, bring some of my combat experience into, and then relate that to the office daily. And then the last thing is training. I've had a good fortune of doing a lot of training for a bunch of different companies, and in so doing, I've created 19 different training modules that are really fun to execute, kind of off the shelf stuff. But where there's a need out there, like recently, I just did some training on call center escalation. And all I did was bring my escalation of force experience from the military in and then talked about how you escalate and de-escalate and things like that. So it was a lot of fun. So yeah, middle-sized companies. I've done some work in pharmaceuticals, and I've done some leadership assessment stuff in private equity, and then first responders. I've been working with nurses and police officers. It's been a lot of fun, especially on that side. You can really relate to service and selfless service, and giving of yourself to others.
Yeah, no, well, I'm glad you're doing it. I think, part of this, being able to be self-employed and being entrepreneurial is, to find yourself in roles such as what you're doing, and others are doing it, is to get more of that experienced veteran mindset into smaller organizations. Whether that's, doing coaching, the kind of stuff you're doing, or instead of going to always work for the Amazon or the Booz Allens, maybe you find some of these smaller companies where you can fit in and actually have more influence and find a
Sure.
bit more of a purpose. That's another avenue. How to fit folks, if so for those that are transitioning, think about those fellow, O6s, E8s. I run into them a lot, E9s, where they're, they just don't even know that that world exists. Maybe,
Right.
to how do you find, or how do you start the conversation where it isn't just the, hey, I went to this recruiter, this headhunter, and he's just going to plug me in over here as long as I don't screw up the interview. any
Yeah,
any tips for that world?
it's tough, right? Because the transition program does not serve veterans very well as they make the transition. Now, to be fair, the transition program TAP is designed to administratively separate you from military service,
Yeah.
to close all that out, right? So in that aspect, it succeeds. But what's missing, hugely is, okay, now what? What do I do next? Where do I go, and who do I connect with? What I really push a lot of service members to do, as they've got a set of orders to transition, is to start networking very heavily. And I teach them how to do it, because it's an art form. There's a process to networking, and I tell them very strongly, urge them very strongly to get onto LinkedIn. And here's the most important point, Scott: connect with non-veterans, because it is we that now occupy the space that they live in.
Hmm.
It is we that need to speak their language and assimilate back to the greater society. One of the things I discovered when I transitioned is just how small the military is. Tiny. I mean, a fraction of our nation. You could fit the entire Department of Defense inside the city of Sacramento, California, which is not a big city.
Yeah.
Right, the entire Department of Defense, and you think about subcategories in like Army infantry, airborne community, very, very small. Now you're in this vast ocean. And so you've got to start connecting with people like that and just having conversations. And a lot of times it's a little ignorant. Like, let's say, you coming out of the military, you want to serve in technology. You think, all right, then find some people in that space, maybe your age, maybe where you live, maybe where you want to live. Say, hey, I'm about to transition out of the military. I'd love to have a chat with you about what you do and learn more. And I think that's a way just to educate oneself to what is out there, and what language are they speaking, and where might they place me given my background and experience and my core passion, what I really want to do in life.
No, that's really important advice, because too often we just end up go find another veteran, who, we just stay in this little circle, and we're
Yeah,
just
and you need that, Scott. We do need
yeah,
to stay connected to the tribe. It's very important, very healthy. But if we just stay in these just isolated
yeah.
pockets, it's going to be tough for you.
I mean, I run into it. Some of these insurance carriers that I work with, I've looked up their entire workforce, because it's hard to explain to them, getting in veteran insured just for all sorts of reasons. Not one person in their whole workforce, over 200 people, has ever served in the military, even the reserves. And so I was like, holy cow! Like, I had no idea that
You're
that could
surrounded.
happen. Right. So,
Yeah.
no, it's a great point. And how easy is it just to start? Who doesn't want to have a conversation? If you ask them, they'd be like,
Oh,
"Oh,
I
I'd
know.
love to help," because they always say, "Oh, well, thank you for your service. What do I say instead?" They want to help, so but we got to ask them. We got to open the door
Yeah.
for them. So thanks for bringing that up.
A lot of
But
them out there.
awesome, Rob. Well, I'll throw your website up here. How else people get a hold of you?
The other great place is LinkedIn. I've got over 20,000 connections there. I got a big network there. And so always a great place to bump into folks. And, you go to my website, you'll find that you can find a way to get on my calendar there, contact me, and have a chat. So I've made it as easy as I can make it.
There you go. No, well, really appreciate it, man. And for everyone else, we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Scott.
Yep. Thanks.